Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse was a delightful surprise. I remember watching the first film back when it came out, and honestly, I wasn't necessarily thinking the same thing everyone else was thinking. However, this time around, I have to say this might be one of my favourite Spider-Man movies ever. From the way the music plays such a pivotal part into how great the movie comes together, to the amount of stylistic choices that they chose to make throughout the whole movie, and not to mention all of the references to everything across the comics and movies. So let's spend some time, talk about each area and some extras, so obviously make sure that if you haven't seen this movie or that you care about spoilers, to just click off, head back here later, just make sure to hit the subscribe button on your way out. So let's spend some time talking about what could be quite possibly considered the best animated movie ever. The best place to start is going to be what my thoughts were walking into the cinema. Originally, I thought this movie wasn't going to be as good as everyone was saying it was. I'd seen the trailers where they had the words best Spider-Man movie ever, fellow content creators saying the same thing, and just overall opinion from other people out there saying how great the first film was made me have a little bit of an issue with it. I don't know why when I was walking into this movie, outside of kind of what I mentioned earlier where I didn't really click with the first film as much as everyone else did, so I was kind of going into this film trying to find issues with it, when in reality, it's a great film. So going into this movie, I thought I was going to be walking out being the odd one out once again and saying that the movie wasn't necessarily that great. However, it definitely wasn't the case, and I'm really happy to see that. And yes, this is probably going to make me want to go back and rewatch the first film, because it might just be the case of that now that I'm older, I kind of just didn't appreciate the film when it first came out, but who knows. But like I said earlier, this movie might be one of the best Spider-Man movies ever made. This movie does have slight cameos and nostalgia in the same way that No Way Home did, however I think they handled it way better, which I know for some might sound like an absolutely outrageous statement. But I do think if you were to take out all of the nostalgia elements of this movie, you would still have an absolutely fantastic film, which is something I can't necessarily say the same for when it comes to No Way Home. Before we discuss the reasons why this film is so great, did so well, and all round the ending was actually way better than I thought it was going to be, I'd love to just ask if you could leave a like and subscribe to the channel, help grow this channel all round if you're interested in TV and movie content moving forward. The animation of this film was outstanding, which was completely expected walking in. The original movie was like this and made the whole idea of animated films for adults more of a big deal, especially in the West, and they definitely didn't disappoint this time around either. From the change in frames per second, depending on what they want to show the different characters being displayed like, to the different stylistic choices that were made throughout this entire movie was just insane. So if you are an art student who loves tons of different comic styles, this film might just be a dream encapsulated into a movie. For example, the scene where Miles is running away from all of them was absolutely impeccable, with the changes constantly showing us all of the different types of stylistic choices that they chose to go throughout this entire movie, just made this absolutely outstanding and made nothing seem bland and the same old style throughout the whole thing. If anything, I would say this movie, in a way, works on the TikTok attention span theory. But one thing I do also want to talk about, as it is a part of this movie, obviously, is going to be diversity and politics within a movie. In the first 10 minutes, I do think you're going to see some diversity being pushed within a movie. However, I actually think this is an example of a movie doing it well. You have things like small comments about police and then the BLM badge on Miles's bag, which are really small things that, in my opinion, make everyone happy across the board, as it's not being rammed down your throat the entire thing, but acknowledges things to do with the actual real world and also how these characters would have felt when it came to these scenarios happening in their worlds, but also the opinions of the creatives behind the movie. Originally, I was kind of worried going into this that it would be really forced on diversity, especially considering when this film was being made, but I do think they handled it really well, and it didn't try to alienate or scold an audience when they're just coming there to enjoy a movie and try to watch something that they once enjoyed with the first one and not feeling as if they're being told off. This film, though, in my opinion, was criminally underrated. When I booked the tickets for me and my girlfriend to go see this film, I was shocked at how many seats were available. I originally thought this might have been because we were booking it like a week in advance, but in fact, for some reason, even when we got sat down, less than half the seats in the entire cinema were taken. And I checked on other days as well, and it seemed to be pretty similar across the board, and I think this might just be the way that the West views a lot of animated films and how they're all made for kids. But this film is kind of in this weird grey area where it is made for kids in a way, but it's also made for adults. It's made for both, whereas let's say Puss in Boots, where that will have the outwardly persona right off the bat of being a kids movie. So you've got tons of kids, tons of families there, and the cinema was packed for that film. But then this one it wasn't really like that either. One reason could also be that people just feel exhausted of superhero movies, which is completely understandable, and the other might also be that the whole multiverse thing is a bit much for many viewers because they have to keep up and understand of what's going on in different scenarios. For example, I've heard a lot of complaints when it comes to things like the Doctor Strange movies from other people, mainly because they find that a lot of what's going on with it just seems a bit over the top, too outlandish of just trying to have to process, okay, cool, what is going on here? Why are they building stuff out of the wall? Like, what's going on? And it's just kind of too much for some people. But if you are on the fence when it comes to going and watching this film, I would highly recommend just going, booking a ticket, as I do think that you're probably going to really enjoy it. Especially if you are a Spider-Man fan in general, as I would say, like I said earlier, this is probably the best Spider-Man movie. Now, the ending was something that might be considered a little bit controversial, as it does end on a cliffhanger. However, I personally think this was handled incredibly well. I've seen some people try and compare this to Infinity War, which I think is actually a terrible comparison, as the only actual comparison that can be made between these is that this film is basically a part 1 to a part 2, same with Infinity War with Endgame. This movie though deals with it really well. It's effectively just hyping up the second part, and to be honest, I don't think that it is comparable in any way to Infinity War, primarily because Infinity War ends on a depressive state. It ends in everyone losing. In this, it kind of ends with, okay, cool, Miles is now on a new journey, everyone is now on this new hunt. It doesn't necessarily end in this like extremely doom and gloom scenario. It ends in like a hyped up moment at the end. It's not like Infinity War in any way, in my opinion, so I don't think the comparison is very fair to be making. One thing though that it's done is that it has set us up for many different ideas of kind of what the overarching story is, which is the idea of a higher authority telling Miles how to live his life from his parents, this, you know, entity within this of like the spider people trying to tell him, okay, this is canon, this is not canon, and so on, and basically setting us up to have multiple different villains, from the main kind of blob man, I've kind of forgotten what he's called, I think it's Spot or something like that, from him to, you know, the Spider-Men who are trying to hunt him down to try and stop him from breaking the canon to see what would be happening if he broke the script. And then on top of that, you've got the world that Miles has just entered with all of these different versions where everything has imploded because there was no Spider-Man to stop the crime. All round, what I think this movie has done is given us yet another great movie for this year that we can add on to the likes of Puss in Boots, John Wick 4, Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and now Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Which is absolutely great, and I can't wait for next month where we're going to have Oppenheimer, which honestly I'm very hyped for. That's like the movie I've been waiting for like a year now. It looks so good, I cannot wait. So yeah, that will probably be the next big film that I'll be talking about. So yeah, if you are interested in any of this type of content, make sure to leave a like, do subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time for another one of these.